Hello, it's Willie from the Ozarks and ready for our January the 10th lesson in A Course in Miracles workbook for students. My thoughts do not mean anything. My thoughts do not mean anything. This idea applies to all the thoughts of which you are aware or become aware in the practice periods. The reason the idea is applicable to all of them is that they are not your real thoughts. We have made this distinction before and will again. You have no basis for comparison as yet. When you do, you will have no doubt that what you once believed were your thoughts did not mean anything. This is the second time we have used this kind of idea. The form is only slightly different. This time the idea is introduced with my thoughts instead of these thoughts, and no link is made overtly with the things around you. The emphasis is now on the lack of reality of what you think you think. This aspect of the correction process began with the idea that the thoughts of which you are aware are meaningless, outside rather than within, and then stressed their past rather than their present status. Now we are emphasizing that the presence of these thoughts means that you are not thinking, and those thoughts, when it says thoughts, they're in quotations because they're not real thoughts. This is merely another way of repeating our earlier statement that your mind is really blank. To recognize this is to recognize nothingness when you think you see it. As such, it is the prerequisite for vision. Close your eyes for these exercises and introduce them by repeating the idea for today quite slowly to yourself. Then add, this idea will help to release me from all that I now believe. The exercises consist as before in searching your mind for all the thoughts which are available to you without selection or judgment. Try to avoid classification of any kind. In fact, if you find it helpful to do so, you might imagine that you are watching an oddly assorted procession going by, which has little, if any, personal meaning to you. So you're sitting by the side of the road as many marching bands walk by, and you're just watching them go by. That's the example. But you're looking at your thoughts this way. As each one crosses your mind, say, this thought about blank does not mean anything. That thought about blank does not mean anything. Today's idea can obviously serve for any thought that distresses you at any time. In addition, 5 practice periods are recommended, each involving no more than a minute or so of mind searching. So we're going to do 5 quiet, with our eyes closed practice periods, each to take a minute or so. But he says, it is not recommended that this time period be extended, and it should be reduced to half a minute or even less if you experience discomfort. He doesn't want us to feel any pain here, no terrible dreams or anything. Remember, however, to repeat the idea slowly before applying it specifically, and also to add, this idea will help to release me from all that I now believe. So we're going to basically start off by closing our eyes and saying, my thoughts do not mean anything. And then we're just going to look at our thoughts like a parade going by. And then as we're looking at them, we're going to say to each thought, this thought about blank does not mean anything. Or that thought about blank does not mean anything. And of course, we'll give ourselves the reminder that this idea will help to release me from all that I now believe. All right, so have fun with that lesson. Let's go take a look in our text reading, and there's a lot I want to talk about. There is so much in this, and I want to do it fairly quickly, but I do want to tell you about one plant, spinach. We all like, most of us like spinach. The variety I like to plant and usually do is Bloomsdale, which is Spinacia oleracea, producing vigorous upright plants with dark green glossy savoid leaves. This variety is very tender, with an excellent flavor. Plants grow to 10 inches with 2 to 3 inch long leaves. A quick growing variety that produces heavy yields. Bloomsdale is ideal for late spring or summer planting. It is also slow to bolt. Developed in 1875 by D. Landreth and Sons Seed Company of Philadelphia. It's a 39 to 60 day variety. So that's your Bloomsdale. All right, let's take a look now. We're ready for Chapter 3, Retraining the Mind, and I've got a lot I'm going to read with very little comment. And there's so much here that I'd encourage you. Hopefully you've already read it, and even if you have, you may want to read it again after I read some high points. Retraining the Mind, the introduction. This is a course in mind training. Some of the latter parts of the course rest too heavily on these earlier sections not to require their study. I have stressed that awe is not an appropriate reaction to me because of our inherent equality, says Jesus. Some of the latter steps in this course, however, do involve a more direct approach to God Himself. It would be most unwise to start on these steps without careful preparation, or awe will be confused with fear, and the experience will be more traumatic than beatific. We want the beautiful experience, so do some early studies here, okay? Healing is of God in the end. The means are being carefully explained to you. Revelation may occasionally reveal the end to you, but to reach it, the means are needed. This next section, 2, the special principle for miracle workers. There's 7 principles. Let me read them each. I'm just going to say a sentence about each one. First principle that he's talking about, the miracle abolishes the need for lower order concerns since it is an out-of-pattern time interval. 2, clear distinctions between what has been created and what is being created is essential. 3, never confuse right with wrong-mindedness. Responding to any form of miscreation with anything except a desire to heal or a miracle is an expression of this confusion. So the desire to heal, we're finding out, is a miracle. 4, the miracle is always a denial of this The miracle is always a denial of this error and an affirmation of the truth. Only right-mindedness can create in a way that has any real effect. 5, the level adjustment power of the miracle induces the right perception for healing. 6, miraculous forgiveness is only correction. It has no element of judgment at all. And then he quotes out of Luke 23:34 something that he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do, in no way evaluates what they do. It is strictly limited to an appeal to God to heal their minds. And then he quotes out of Philippians 2:2, and also says something from Luke 22:19 in this next one, number 7. The biblical injunction, be of one mind, is the statement for revelation readiness. My own injunction, do this in remembrance of me, is the request for cooperation from miracle workers. Okay, then let's go on to number 3, atonement without sacrifice. And I'm going to read just almost the whole next page. There is another point which must be perfectly clear before any residual fear which still may be associated with miracles becomes entirely groundless. The crucifixion did not establish the atonement. The resurrection did. This is a point which many very sincere Christians have misunderstood. No one who is free of the scarcity error could possibly make this mistake. If the crucifixion is seen from an upside-down point of view, it does appear as if God permitted and even encouraged one of His sons to suffer because he was good. Many ministers preach this every day. This particularly unfortunate interpretation, which arose out of the combined misprojections of a large number of my would-be followers has led many people to be bitterly afraid of God. This particularly anti-religious concept enters into many religions, and this is neither by chance nor by coincidence. Yet the real Christian would have to pause and ask, how could this be? Is it likely that God himself would be capable of the kind of thinking which his own words have clearly stated is unworthy of man? The best defense, as always, is not to attack another's position, but rather to protect the truth. It is unwise to accept any concept if you have to turn a whole frame of reference around in order to justify it. This procedure is painful in its minor applications and genuinely tragic on a mass basis. Persecution is a frequent result, undertaken to justify the terrible misperception that God himself persecuted his own Son on behalf of salvation. The very words are meaningless. It has been particularly difficult to overcome this because although the error itself is no harder to overcome than any other error, men were unwilling to give this one up because of its prominent escape value. In milder forms, a parent says that this hurts me more than it hurts you, and feels exonerated in beating a child. Can you believe that the Father really thinks this way? It is so essential that all such thinking be dispelled that we must be very sure that nothing of this kind remains in your mind. I was not punished because you were bad. The wholly benign lesson the atonement teaches is lost if it is tainted with this kind of distortion in any form. Vengeance is mine, says the Lord, is a strictly karmic viewpoint. And I'm sorry, I forgot to look that one up, tell you where it was found in the Bible. But you can look it up yourself. It is a real misperception of truth by which man assigns his own evil past to God. The evil conscience from the past has nothing to do with God. He did not create it, and he does not maintain it. God does not believe in karmic retribution. His divine mind does not create that way. He does not hold the evil deeds of a man even against himself. Is it likely then that he would hold against anyone the evil that another did? Be very sure that you recognize how utterly impossible this assumption really is and how entirely it rises from misprojection. This kind of error is responsible for a host of related errors, including the belief that God rejected man and forced him out of the Garden of Eden. I have made every effort to use words that are almost impossible to distort. But man is very inventive when it comes to twisting symbols around. And this is why I like just to encourage folks to just read the book over and over. It'll come clear as you just keep reading it. The atonement itself radiates nothing but truth. It therefore epitomizes harmlessness and sheds only blessing. It could not do this if it arose from anything but perfect innocence. Innocence is wisdom because it is unaware of evil, which does not exist. It is, however, perfectly aware of everything that is true. The resurrection demonstrated that nothing can destroy truth. Good can withstand any form of evil because light abolishes all forms of darkness. The atonement is thus the perfect lesson. It is the final demonstration that all the other lessons which I taught are true. If you can accept the one generalization now, there will be no need to learn from many smaller lessons. Nothing can prevail against a son of God who commends his spirit into the hands of his Father. By doing this, the mind awakens from its sleep and remembers its Creator. This vision can be perceived only by the truly innocent. Because their hearts are pure, the innocent defend true perception instead of defending themselves against it. Understanding the lesson of the atonement, they are without the will to attack, and therefore they see truly. This is what the Bible means, and this is in 1 John 3:2, when it says, when he shall appear or be perceived, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. Sacrifice is a notion totally unknown to God. It arises solely from fear. This is particularly unfortunate because frightened people are apt to be vicious. Sacrificing another in any way is a clear-cut violation of God's own injunction that man should be merciful even as his Father in heaven. It has been hard for many Christians to realize that this commandment, or assignment, I like that for commandment, assignment, also applies to themselves. Good teachers never terrorize their students. To terrorize is to attack, and this results in rejection of what the teacher offers. The result is learning failure. I have been correctly referred to as the Lamb of God who taketh away the sins of the world. You can find that in John 1, verse 29, and some other places. Those who represent the Lamb as blood-stained in an all too wide spread error, those who represent the Lamb as blood-stained, an all too widespread error, do not understand the meaning of the symbol. Correctly understood, it is a very simple parable which merely speaks of my innocence. The lion and the lamb lying down together refers to the fact that strength and innocence are not in conflict, but naturally live in peace. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God, is another way of saying the same thing. The innocence of God is the true state of mind of His Son. And then in the last section we're going to read today, and we'll talk about some highlights. Section 4, miracles as accurate perception. A firm commitment to darkness or nothingness is impossible. No one who has ever lived who has not experienced some light and some of everything. Innocent or true perception means that you never misperceive and always see truly. More simply, it means that you never see what does not really exist. We have said many times that only what God creates or what man creates with the same will has any real existence. You cannot validate the invalid. I would suggest that you voluntarily give up all such attempts because they can only be frantic. If you are willing to validate what is true in everything you perceive, you will make it true for you. Truth overcomes all error. This means that if you perceive truly, you are canceling out misperceptions in yourself and in others simultaneously. Because you see them as they are, you offer them your own validation of their truth. This is the healing which the miracle actively fosters. Okay, now let's go take a look in our Manual for Teachers reading, Section 5. How is healing accomplished? Healing involves an understanding of what the illusion of sickness is for. Healing is impossible without this. And there's 3 sections, and we'll read the first 2, the perceived purpose of sickness. Healing is accomplished the instant the sufferer no longer sees any value in pain. Who would choose suffering unless he thought it brought him something and something of value to him? He must think it is a small price to pay for something of greater worth. For sickness is an election, a decision. It is the choice of weakness and the mistaken conviction that it is strength. When this occurs, real strength is seen as threat and health as danger. Sickness is a method, conceived in madness, for placing God's Son on His Father's throne. God is seen as outside, fierce and powerful, eager to keep all power for Himself. Only by His death can He be conquered by His Son. And what in this insane conviction does healing stand for? It symbolizes the defeat of God's Son and the triumph of His Father over Him. It represents the ultimate defiance in a direct form which the Son of God is forced to recognize. It stands for all that he would hide from himself to protect his life. If he is healed, he is responsible for his thoughts. And if he is responsible for his thoughts, he will be killed to prove to him how weak and pitiful he is. But if he chooses death himself, his weakness is his strength. Now has he given himself what God would give to him, and thus entirely usurped the throne of his Creator. Of course, this is the deluded mind thinking, isn't it? The shift in perception. Healing must occur in exact proportion in which the valueness of the sickness is recognized. One need but say there is no gain to me at all in this, and he is healed. We want to start saying that, don't we? There is no gain to me at all in this, and he is healed. And we want to really mean it, though, of course. But to say this, one must first recognize certain facts. First, it is obvious that decisions are of the mind and not of the body. If sickness is but a faulty problem-solving approach, it is a decision. And if it is a decision, it is the mind and not the body that makes it. The resistance to recognizing this is enormous, because the existence of the world as we perceive it depends on the body being the decision maker. Terms like instincts, reflexes, and the like represent attempts to endow the body with non-mental motivators. Actually, such terms merely state or describe the problem. They do not answer it. The acceptance of sickness as a decision of the mind for a purpose for which it would use the body is the basis of healing. And this is so for healing in all forms. Let's read that again. Acceptance of sickness as a decision of the mind for a purpose for which it would use the body is the basis of healing. And this is so for healing in all forms. A patient decides that this is so and he recovers. If he decides against recovery, he will not be healed. Who is the physician? Only the mind of the patient himself. The outcome is what he decides that it is. Special agents seem to be ministering to him, yet they but give form to his own choice. He chooses them to bring tangible form to his own desires, and it is this they do and nothing else. They are not actually needed at all. The patient could merely rise up without their aid and say, "I have no use for this." There is no form of sickness that would not be cured at once. What is the single requisite for this shift in perception? It is simply this: the recognition that sickness is of the mind and has nothing to do with the body. What does this recognition cost? It costs the whole world we see, for the world will never again appear to rule the mind. For with this recognition is responsibility placed where it belongs, not with the world, but on him who looks on the world and sees it as it is not. You, the way you think of the world. He looks on what he chooses to see, no more and no less. You're the maker of your world. The world does nothing to him. He only thought it did. Nor does he do anything to the world because he was mistaken about what it was. Herein is the release from guilt and sickness both, for they are one. Yet to accept this release, the insignificance of the body must be an acceptable idea. With this idea is pain forever gone, but with this idea goes also all confusion about creation. Does not this follow of necessity? Place cause and effect in their true sequence in one respect, and the learning will generalize and transform the world. The transfer value of one true idea has no end nor limit. The final outcome of this lesson is the remembrance of God. What do guilt and sickness, pain, disaster, and all suffering mean now? Having no purpose, they are gone, and with them also go all the effects they seem to cause. Cause and effect but replicate creation. Seen in their proper perspective, without distortion and without fear. They reestablish heaven. All right, my thoughts do not mean anything. So it's our lesson for today. Be sure to do it 5 times for about a minute each time. A little less if it brings up a lot of pain that you can't handle. These exercises should be comforting and bring you some relief. All right, my thoughts do not mean anything, and be sure to tell yourself in this lesson, this idea will help to release me from all that I now believe. My thoughts do not mean anything. Thank you all very much for joining me today, and we'll see you tomorrow. My thoughts do not mean anything. This idea will help to release me from all that I now believe.